Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here on this Wednesday. Just got home last night. I tell you what, so a group of us hung out in the lobby of a hotel until around midnight, and I had to get up at 3:30 to catch my flight. So I did not go to sleep that night before. You know how plane sleep is, not that great. Y'all, I went to bed last night before 8 o'clock and woke up after 10 today. I was exhausted, but it was much needed. I had an amazing time in Yellowstone. It was such an amazing trip. A few days before sentencing, I decided at the very last minute to go to Yellowstone. It's on my bucket list. I was close, so I figured why not? And what a great decision. I did the loop around and got to see all of the big sights, and it did my soul good just to be out with nature and just super nice people on the trails. I met an alibier on the trail, so hello to Tara. Good meeting you in the most random place in the world in the middle of nowhere in Yellowstone. Man, if you get a chance, go. It is just amazing. I could have just spent 2 weeks in there. And then I made my way down to Rexburg, where I went to the memorial fence, which was touching and heavy and everything else you could imagine. And so then came sentencing, which the victim impact statements, just powerful on every level. To hear the emotion in that room bouncing off the walls and to see Lori slump further and further down in her chair, let me know it made her very uncomfortable, as it should. And then her allocution, as we know, was just out there. There are no words, y'all. No words at all. So, music fact of the day: Jailhouse Rock, the movie, it was originally going to be called Ghost of a Chance, but we know the song was a massive hit. It was number one on the US pop charts for 7 weeks, also reached number one on the country and R&B charts. And they snuck a little something in. When it says number 47 said to number 3, "You're the cutest jailbird I ever did see," this is a very sly reference to Prison Love, but it was not offensive enough to create any kind of controversy. So there you go. Now you know. And a little bit of breaking news: there has been an arrest warrant issued for Lori out of Maricopa County for Charles. Get this. It says first-degree murder, premeditated, and not conspiracy. I'm working to find out if that's the case, if they've upgraded those charges. So they didn't waste any time. Also, Lori's ex-sister-in-law, Annie Cushing, and her sister, Summer Shiflett, have both said this story she gave during her allocution about dying on the table with Tylee and going to heaven for a little visit, they had never heard it. So probably just a bunch of hogwash, like everything else that came out of her mouth during the 10 minutes or so that she talked. I decided to go back a little bit to a prior episode I did because it really relates to Lori. As you guys know, if you've been around for a few years, I know somebody who is incarcerated in a California women's prison. She is a lifer. And we did a big series called A Glimpse at Life, where we used what she was telling us and conveyed that on the podcast because people are very curious what goes through somebody's mind once everything's over and you're going to prison. Jail and prison are two different worlds. Like Lori, the person I know, was in a very small jail, and the acclimation into prison was not easy, and that will happen for Lori. So one thing that she talks about: in county jail, high-profile inmates oftentimes will be isolated from other prisoners. This can be a blessing or a curse. The blessing is you're alone and there's no drama, but the curse: you have no idea how to play the game when you go to prison, and prison is nothing but a bunch of games on the inside amongst prisoners. While awaiting your transfer to prison, you can only replay regrets and build your fear of what is to come. In this person I know, in her case, she said during the months she was with other inmates at the jail, she had a cellmate who had been to prison and tried to prepare her. But she said it was helpful, but the reality is there's no preparing yourself. A kind of numbness sets in after conviction and sentencing. This has been true for most of the girls I have lived with and spoken with, regardless of mental health status. You just want to get it over. By the way, I posted a picture today on Facebook of Lori's mugshot, the newest one, And I was going through the commissary list to see things that are available for her to purchase. People that get offended for me photoshopping a hat on her and saying, hey, this is available in the commissary if you'd like to purchase it. I will always inject humor when I can, when it's appropriate, and never at the expense of victims. If you don't like it, this isn't the podcast for you. And my feelings won't be hurt if you move on, because you know what? At the end of the day, look what she did. She lied. She covered up what she did, but she totally knew what she did was wrong because she lied. Oh, Melanie Gibb, please snap some pictures so I can send it to cops. Oh, Tylee's at BYUI. If she really were that far gone, she would have said, yeah, we killed everybody. They were zombies. We did them a favor. So those that got offended today, sorry, not sorry. That's how I roll. And most listeners appreciate a little bit of humor. I don't feel bad for putting that out there. Anyways, back to it. She talks about the transport to prison. You just want to get it over. The hours on the transport bus is surreal, and fear and numbness take turns being in control. For her, she had metal shackles on her wrist, her waist, and her ankles for the ride, and was in a cage, she said, similar to the one you would see on the movie Con Air. Now, 85 miles is the distance from Rexburg to Pocatello, or I call it Pocatello, because, you know, I call the prison Pokey. Jail is the Pokey, so Pocatello. She says you are given a lice wash, and that smell lingers for days. Intake is to the point with staff asking point blank, if you die, who do we call? After processing, you are given a bedroll and sent to your building and cell. For the most part, the first few days and weeks can be a temporary building with other new intakes as the processing continues. So what happens in Idaho? Well, I did a little bit of research about their intake process, and it may be a little bit outdated, but I think it's pretty relevant. These things typically don't change. So upon arrival, the following hygiene items are issued: 1 razor, 2 bars of soap, 1 styrofoam cup, 1 toothbrush, 1 small tube of toothpaste or tooth powder, 1 small pencil, and items such as toilet paper and razors will be issued on an exchange basis. The intake process typically takes 2 weeks. However, the process may take longer if there are any delays in receiving your pre-sentencing investigation report. Remember, the one that Lori largely did not let her defense do, so that should be pretty quick. You will remain in intake until you have received the following: fingerprinting, DNA, an ID card, medical and dental screening, a mental health screening, drug and alcohol screening, education screening, your security, what level they deem you need to be in. And those who arrive at intake first will be at the top of the list. You will conduct yourself in an orderly and respectful manner. All orders, written and verbal, will be promptly obeyed without question or argument. You will be issued an identification card that will be worn on the outermost piece of clothing on the left breast pocket or collar with the photo facing out. You are responsible for the cost of a new ID if you lose or alter it. All movements will be made during announced institutional movement unless escorted or authorized by staff or the sending location. So back to the perspective from the person I know. The reception where she's at, she said it is a vicious place. Cases involving children are encouraged by staff to lie, but it gets them beaten up later for the case and then lying for being a coward. If the attacks become life-threatening, the staff will move the person to protective custody. The adjustment from jail to prison is huge. It's a shock to the system in many ways, and it's the first time you realize you're never getting out. You think in the back of the mind you might be acquitted at trial and you'll just leave jail to rejoin the world, and then it hits you. Once those bus doors open and the shackles come off, you are placed in a group holding cell that you're not getting out. Once you're there, you're strip searched all together in one room. People also are questioning each other about their cases, how much time they have, gang affiliations. You have medical and psych exams. In jail, you dream of what you'll do when you first get out, who you will see, where you will eat, what you will wear. When the sentence is handed down, you feel like your life is really over and reality hits like a ton of bricks. You feel like an alien walking into the prison with the other new arrivals. Everyone stares and tries to size you up. You feel like you're on display. You have zero privacy anymore. None. using the toilet, showering, somebody is always nearby. She said on average, it takes new inmates a couple of years to really feel comfortable and get into the habit of prison life. Prison overload is the overwhelming feeling of helplessness of any area of your own life. The rules, the people, the overcrowded conditions, the substandard food, mediocre medical care, the yelling, the fighting, the bickering, the pettiness, the drunk idiots raising a ruckus, the grown adults acting like immature children, the coldness of people and the environment, the endless days and the endless nights, the loneliness, the smells, the taste, the sounds, the fact that it feels like it will never end. Sometimes it's just so chaotic from sunup to sundown, it fills the air so bad you can taste it. Prison is scary, humiliating, and humbling. You are not in control of a single element of your life except your private thoughts. One inmate described going to prison as being in a hostile country. You don't know anything about the language or the customs the minute you walk in the door, and you're new there. On days when prison overload hits, it feels so heavy that addiction, self-harm, and self-sabotage all become real options. Sleep can become an actual addiction, as can drugs, alcohol, food, coffee, etc. Prison is constantly loud. There is never a moment of pure quiet. In jail, it's quieter at times, and the adjustment from going to where it's quiet at times to never being quiet can drive you insane. They don't have earplugs in prison, but maybe Lori will learn, like others have before her, wet toilet paper shoved in your ears can work okay enough. The homesickness is consuming. Of course, she's homesick for heaven, according to what she said the other day. You can't prepare for it or avoid it. She sees most people lose their religion than gain it. Wouldn't that be something with Lori? What adversely affects the staff will eventually adversely affect you. In jail, while she was awaiting trial, she would stay in her bunk away from others to avoid drama, and that was easy. In jail, your laundry was brought to you. Only low levels went to chow hall, the library, and classes, so it was relatively safe. In prison, unless someone was in the SHU, which is like the segregation unit, or locked down, you are mingling with every type of personality you can imagine, and you have to deal with it. You can't just ask to be moved or be sent to another cell block. And if you could, it would be the same thing there anyways. There is an unwritten code of prison you're supposed to know, but are never taught, such as how to deal with unpleasant people, which guards have pet peeves, and how not to set them off, and how not to make yourself vulnerable. Okay, if Lori comes in there with a chip on her shoulder and disrespects people initially or act high and mighty, you become a huge target. Some inmates will do things very early on to deflate all that. You can't bring anything with you except the clothes on your back, eyeglasses, and a list of medications you're given from a doctor. Initially, during her transition from jail to prison, she had a hard time resolving in her mind. She would never hug her family again, and she would lose those she loved one by one as she sat in her cell. Some days felt endless, with 24 hours feeling like a month. One thing that was hard for her is the scheduling of unlocking the cells. There's an announcement over the PA. If you miss it, you miss it. It's supposed to be at the same time every day, but it never is. They don't open it for anyone. So if you're lost in your music with your earbuds and you miss the call, you're in for hours. The first month in, you don't have commissary yet, so you don't have anything other than clothing and chow meals. No TV, no radio, no clock. So let's jump over to some commissary stuff that Lori will have access to. I found her name on the JPay list. I have an account so I can talk to this girl that I know. So tablets, none of this you can get the first month if Idaho is like most other states. A 9-inch tablet is $99.99 with 32 gigs of memory. You can store and personally manage your content, place phone calls, send emails with more privacy without sharing a device. They have access to educational course material, programs, and ebooks. They have a gallery app where they can receive photos and save them. They can browse the media store to purchase music, rent games, and movies, and they can subscribe to daily news feeds. Now, they don't have free access to the internet, no social media. Some do because they have contraband, and they get contraband cell phones, but these tablets very limited in what you can do. And it's also dependent on people on the outside putting money on your books to be able to pay for this stuff. Also, we know Lori was ordered to pay some restitution. In Idaho, 20% of anything put in her account is immediately taken off and repaid to whoever that money is designated for. So she will get 20% taken off just off the top. A JPay Media account, her facility uses JPay. I've checked. It's an account managed by your loved one. From this account, your incarcerated loved one can purchase a tablet, songs and music albums, games, rent movies and TV shows, use stamps, and every email you send is usually about 2 stamps. So 5 stamps cost you $2. You can see if you're sending emails back and forth, whoever's on the outside is going to be consistently putting money on, and she'll have 20% of that raised off the top. The maximum spending limit for commissary is $80 a week. Items must be purchased from the menus provided by the commissary. Properties such as radios and TVs also must be purchased from the property menu and is not included in the $80 weekly commissary total. When filling out the menu, your signature and offender number must be on the menu or it will not be processed. Offenders in restrictive housing are limited to $50 weekly for commissary. So I looked up some commissary prices for Pocatello Women's Prison. If you want a loofah, $12. The only shampoo and conditioner she's able to buy, White Rain, at $3.50 each. Deodorant costs you $7.50. Get this, some CoverGirl foundation you can get at CVS for $10. $17.73 at Pocatello. Mascara is going to set you back about $11. Eyeshadow, $10.35. A regular size bag of Cheetos we get for $4, around $9 through the commissary. Get this, guys. I did not see hair color on their list. There are certain things you can get, like a 15-inch TV for nearly $300. A remote control, $14. A Timex watch, $61. And a digital alarm clock is $22.98. Prison is full of manipulators. A lot of people enter prison thinking they have the advantage. And if they were particularly good at it on the outside, well, you got something coming, because you are likely to be very inexperienced and terrible at manipulating other inmates, especially people who are coming in for the first time. Most of the time, it doesn't take long for that to be realized by the old inmates, and they are essentially stripped bare on that level with the chip on their shoulder. You have to earn respect in prison, and you are at the bottom of the totem pole when you first walk through. Nobody cares how powerful or successful you were on the outside. In prison, you are in with severely mentally ill inmates, homeless inmates, blue collar, or super wealthy on the outside inmates. If you let it be known you come from money, then you're targeted for many reasons, especially favors in the form of having your family on the outside put money on books for other inmates. Suicide attempts are common in the first few months for new inmates. If those who are struggling big time to adapt don't attempt it, they'll just check out emotionally. She's seen people almost comatose, just gone. They may be moved to a mental unit, but almost always they come back. There's too many mentally ill people in prison for staff to deal with. So they're integrated into the prison population, and you cross your fingers you are not the victim of some random attack. Using drugs is a common way to check out emotionally. She's seen middle class, high society, or super religious with no history of drug use, and in no time, they are addicted to hard drugs. The reality of prison is sometimes just too much for people to come to terms with, so they turn to other things. All right, here we go. The higher profile the criminal, the more they're targeted. People get jealous if your case made you known far and wide. Breaking that persona is one of the first things to happen to new, more famous inmates. If you hurt a kid, it's even worse. Some high-profile inmates will find a group that offers them physical protection, but the verbal and emotional abuse never stops, causing the inmate to constantly expect something to happen, always looking over your shoulder, never comfortable enough to just turn over and go to sleep immediately. Prison seems like you're trapped in the drama of high school, but you don't go home at the end of the day. In jail, you mostly have free time. Some meet with their lawyers more often than others, so free time isn't always all day for some. But in prison, things are much more uniformed, with scheduled times to be out in common areas. Where this girl is, you're required to attend programs such as jobs or school or treatment programs. If you don't show up, there are consequences. Her bunk, there are 8 people living in a 19 by 24-foot cell. It has 2 sinks and a toilet with no privacy. The toilet is out in the open and you do your business with 7 other people watching. You can get on people's bad list real quick for things like if your business smells up the cell or if you're having a bout of the gassies. Dangling your feet off the top bunk can get your nose busted. That is a big sign of disrespect. So, what about mail? She can get mail, general correspondence, new or used books from a bookstore or publisher. You cannot send people books because that's how things get laced with drugs you can lick and stuff like that. You can get new magazines, newspapers, and other publications such as monthly or daily calendars, journals, things that are mailed from the publisher or the bookstore only. Greeting cards, 8 by 10 size or smaller, must not be padded, laminated, multi-layered, or musical. You can have up to 20 loose photographs, 5 by 8 or smaller. Polaroid type photos are not allowed. Images printed on copy grade paper stock are not considered a photograph. By the way, at Pocatello, in-person visitation has been suspended. It opened in 1994 and has the capacity of 331 female residents and houses all custody levels. They have vocational work projects, correctional industries, educational opportunities. You can get quarterly boxes where people on the outside order everything for you. The limit is $160 you can spend per quarter. You may only have 1 TV, 1 radio, 1 fan, 1 hot pot, a mug or cup, 1 clock on the top of your locker. Televisions may be placed on personal towels on the lockers to act as an insulator. Headphones will be used on TVs and personal audio devices. Clothing and living areas will be kept neat and clean. Hats, headbands, bandanas, sunglasses, and other headgear will not be worn indoors unless on a work assignment. Hats must be worn with the visor in the front, and sunglasses only when outdoors. Any religious item will not be visible, to include religious medallions. Some religious items are allowed only in your cells or in the chapel. When you enter into the Idaho Department of Correction Reception and Diagnostic Unit, I call it intake, it's abbreviated to RDU, you receive an initial classification, and that determines where you may be housed. Within 6 months, you'll be scheduled for a reclassification to determine whether or not your custody level will change. She'll be a max regardless. She's convicted of 2 murders and 1 conspiracy to commit murder. So she'll be in the big bad unit. Meals are served 3 times a day except on weekends and holidays when meal service provides 2 meals with the same nutritional value as 3 meals. The average daily calorie content of the mainline menu is 2,900 calories. And you will line up to receive your tray. When received, proceed to the beverage island and then sit down to the next open seat. You may not save seat for others. You may not get up to visit other tables. You may not give your tray or any food item to other offenders. If there is a problem or a concern with your tray, bring it to the attention of food service staff before you sit down. Otherwise, you will not receive any missing items. And I guarantee you that's probably a surefire way to get some spit in your food if you complain to food service about their food. Remain in your seat until you're finished eating, take your tray to the dishwasher, and immediately leave the dining hall. Each housing unit is scheduled to wash clothing twice weekly. Towels and sheets should also be washed on these days. Blankets are scheduled to be washed once weekly. Remember, you are responsible for your clothing. It will be your responsibility to keep your clothing and bedding laundered each week. So, a prison hack, painting toenails using color pencils and floor wax. You can crush color pencils and dissolve them in liquid floor wax. You paint the nail with the mix and then put a coat of wax between each layer for a total of 6 layers. They actually last as long as actual toenail polish. One thing she totally experienced was this huge culture shock when she was adjusting to prison. Everything is different than jail. Nothing functions as it does in jail or on the outside. First timers frequently fall into a consuming depression. The first few months in prison is a jolt to every sense you have. Jail just doesn't prepare you for prison at all. It's 2 different worlds. Your body releases a lot of stress hormones and adrenaline on a constant basis, which causes all kinds of mental health issues. She has seen a lot of new arrivals constantly on edge, jumping in fear whenever a loud noise is made or when an argument breaks out. The adrenaline release is your body's natural way to prepare you for fight or flight. She has seen fights break out with new arrivals that wouldn't have happened if these defense hormones coupled with stress weren't at play. Stress hormones rise about 20 to 30% above the brain's baseline for those who are entering prison without a chemical or hormonal balance in the brain to begin with. The prisoners who are first timers have the most challenging acclimation. She has seen new arrivals cry in the corner for weeks until they finally accept their fate that they're never getting out. Newbies to prison always make two common mistakes: asking someone what they're in for and how long they have on their sentence. You'd be surprised at the number of people who haven't memorized phone numbers and forget they can't pull out their phone to get that number. She has seen absolute breakdowns when new inmates realize they don't know any numbers to make that first call, and your only option is to write a snail mail letter or send an email if you're able to pay for a tablet. But that first month, you can't have a tablet. So if you don't know phone numbers, you're not going to be making calls. If you are extra chummy with the guards, it's a huge red flag for other inmates. I totally could see Lori trying to get in good with the guards because they are in a position of authority. And if she does that, it's not going to be pretty for her. A lot of new arrivals lose weight, but once you're more comfortable, weight gain is the norm in prison. The food available in the commissary isn't healthy. And if you tend to stay in your cell and don't get out, you don't get much exercise at all, just in general. When there is a staff shortage or there's been frequent fights or a big fight that was super violent, you might be locked down for days or weeks. You cannot move in a cell with other women in there on a constant basis. Every move is almost coordinated when everyone is awake. For her, she gets up and walks 7 steps to the restroom, followed by 5 steps to the sink, followed by 5 steps to the bed, followed by 7 steps to the shower. When someone is having a mental health episode, it can keep the entire block up all night. You can't turn on anything to drown out the noise. The newer inmates struggle to adapt to these situations, and it can be super scary for them. We talked about mental illness and people who fake mental illness, and she said, not as many as you think come in faking mental illness because the psych unit is terrible. She said most will make that mistake only once and then will learn the limit of when to stop in order to be medicated and nothing more. She said it's hard to spot some fakers because they're really good at faking. Also, some have been faking since they were children, and to them, they believe they now have the disorders. Some of these women have mothers who would claim they had ADHD and other disorders so they themselves could get the meds. The best way to spot a faker is when they slip up. They might forget their tick is on the left-hand side and not the right. They might cry with no tears. They claim anxiety, but their pupils are not dilated and their body is calm. Crisis is when they strip you down and give you a Velcro dress. You are placed in a room with a staff member sitting outside your door or watching through 24-hour video surveillance until the psych releases you. You must ask for toilet paper each time you need it. No thing is in the room but a plastic bunk and a toilet. You're not allowed to use utensils to eat with, even plastic. They have no metal utensils. People in crisis are given cardboard scoops to eat with. Some fakers will say they feel like they want to hurt themselves so they can get the psych to take them serious or to get sympathy from friends and lovers. They are careful to time it so they don't have to stay in for more than 24 hours. They can keep you up to 72 hours on a 5150 psych hold. If you were to go to the psychiatric unit, people are screaming. It's unsanitary. There is no showering and often explosive anger. You attend art therapy, talk therapy. The unit stinks of human filth, as does the medical unit. The inmates react violently and break windows. All the furniture is solid and bolted to the floor. There are timeout cages in the day room or the lobby. These are 7 foot tall and about 3 to 4 feet on each side. People are locked in them when they become disruptive. Mental health patients eat in the chow hall, but usually go last because of the high risk of outbursts, which will delay the rest of the yard having their meal. If someone gets unruly and needs to be pepper sprayed on the unit, you're likely to get a whiff of it yourself and experience symptoms. The windows are not open in prisons. When there is a fight in the cell block, common areas, everyone has to get on the ground until the nurse comes to check for injuries on the ones fighting. Sometimes this can take 30 minutes or more where you're on the ground. Troublemakers can essentially cause punishment for the whole block. If there are frequent fights or disruptions, it can cause people who aren't involved not to get their canteen, their free time, or their mail. Little things that really wear on you, not being able to choose your outfit or be able to go where you want, when you want. Sometimes it's the little things that cause your spirit to break and not the big things. Back when COVID was happening, the lockdowns got more frequent, and so did the making of prison hooch. A lot of times it's made in the toilet, by the way. I would not be desperate enough to drink no toilet hooch. But they use anything from candy, beets, corn, and fruit to make it. And when it's done, it's just a little bit stronger than wine. Ugh. In jail, the officers are deputies first, then employees. In prison, they're employees first and correctional officers second. In prison, you can get away with a little bit more as long as you aren't hurting anyone or interfering with their jobs. She said, for the most part, if correctional officers enforced every little thing, they would never stop writing people up for small infractions. Friendship is the risk of codependency. Friendships risk financial, emotional, physical, psychological, and freedom dates, yet human nature compels us to make friends. Friendships in prison are convenient. You are forced to live together. Most friendships last only in prison. She said, for the most part, you can spend several years with somebody, only never to hear from them again when they're paroled. It's a reminder on the outside, you probably never would have hung out with any of these people, but on the inside, you're thick as thieves, and it's mostly for survival. There are packs of women who do everything together in prison. For the most part, friends in prison fulfill the needs of the moment. She said, you are part of a game, even if you don't want to play. Most inmates don't lose sleep over their crimes, and oftentimes they see themselves as the victim of their incarceration. And I think that is Lori to a T. We heard it the other day. She lies and says there are such things as suicides. There are such things as adverse reactions to medication and overdoses. Might I add, nobody's toxicology showed anything medical related as far as medication goes. So shot those down right there. And also shot down her dime on the table when she was pregnant with Tylee, according to family. Hair dye. How do we make it if we can't get it from the commissary? Kool-Aid powder. Pencils are often used as hair curlers, as are tampons and toilet paper rolls. Most rumors are taken as truth, and truth is discounted as rumor, and this leads to drama all day long. There is a de-evolution process in prison. You slowly shed the outside and things get very primitive on the inside. In prison, you battle the people inside you, the individual and the prisoner. Some days, all you can do is be human. She has seen people in for a couple of years slowly descend into madness and change personalities. By the time they leave, they're unrecognizable from the person they came in as. Bunks are hard with the thin vinyl mattress. A lot of inmates have physical pain on a daily basis due to this. People who have committed crimes against children are the biggest targets. Inmates will corner someone who hurt a child and take body shots with various objects, meaning the only way a guard would know you were attacked is if you were to take your clothes off and show them. Nothing visible to hide the abuse so it can continue. And none report it because eventually the ones who did it will be back in the cell block, and revenge is always a priority if you snitch. However, that first attack, it seems like you do tell, and then you learn the hard way it's going to be twice as bad the next go round. She said snitching can get you cut from mouth to ear. One woman who drowned her young son is often the recipient of choking to the point of almost blacking out. And this happens often, enough to cause panic, never enough to kill her. By the way, prisoners love true crime shows. In fact, this girl that gave me all this information, pretty much the entire women's prison has followed Lori's story to a T. She assures me she is not going to be very popular in there. So we're going to stop there for today. I just wanted to give you a little bit of what Lori could be experiencing right now as the newest resident of the Pocatello Women's Correctional Facility. I will not be doing an episode tomorrow because tomorrow is my daughter's 18th birthday. My baby girl, my firstborn, turns 18. So tomorrow's all about her. I'm putting Lori Vallow out of my head. And I tell you what, I'm ready to see how quickly they extradite her to Arizona because I have heard she is petrified of going to Arizona for these charges. It is hot there. It is not pleasant. Lord, I hope it's soon. Okay, guys, we'll see you later. Have a good one.